seats here, just so you know what the program is going to be. They're going to have 5 minutes to give an introduction of themselves, present themselves. We're going to have a series of 4 or 5 questions that have been prepared or handed in advance. They'll have a minute to respond. Each will respond to every question. They'll have a minute to respond to that. They'll have 2 minutes to sum up at the end. Gentlemen, see that nice lady right there with the clock and the cards and that sweet lady right there? She's the
that one. All right.
She's the enforcer. So when she starts flagging you down with the card. All right, terrific. So Daryl won the coin toss. So we'll let you start. Sure. Welcome.
Thank you and welcome. It's always a pleasure and honor to come to the Republican Executive Committee. As many of you know, I come nearly every month, and it's indeed a pleasure. Thank you for coming out in the storm and weathering a good night. It will be a good night, I can assure you that. Most of you know me. I'm Deryl Loar. I'm 44 years of age. I've been a professional law enforcement officer for nearly 24 years. I married my wife 23 years ago. We have 2 lovely boys, 10 and 14 years of age. In fact, my wife is in Honduras tonight, cannot be with us, with our 14-year-old son on her 2nd annual mission trip, which is a medical team that is in Honduras, seeing about 800 patients this week. Very proud. We do miss her, and we're very honored that she is with about 80 other Indian River County residents over there doing the entry, and Indian River County, representing Indian River County well. A couple things I want to talk about. Number one, being the 10th Sheriff of Indian River County, I'm certainly honored and proud to hold this position. I took office in January of 2009, 42 months ago. And when we think about 42 months ago, what was happening in our community, a lot of things were going on. Gasoline, for example, $2.50 a gallon. March of 2009, the stock market, the Dow Jones, was at 6,500. Unemployment began to creep up, where it peaked, as we all know, around 16.9%. Ironically, it's still down around 9% in Indian River County. Simultaneously, through the last 42 months, a lot of things have occurred. 90 days into office, I get direction from the county administrator's office and the county commissioners that we need to cut 12.9% from our budget. At the time, our budget was about $44 million. Proud to tell you today, our budget that was recently turned in on May 1st is about $37.5 million. Now, my first budget was $42 million, so when you do the math, I've cut the budget by $5 million in 42 months. Pretty remarkable, I'd say. Additionally, as you may have read recently, crime is down in Indian River County. In fact, crime is down 6.1%. That's a wonderful thing. However, I will caution you, like we cautioned our executive staff and our deputies, that just because crime is down this particular quarter, 6.1%, we have to be careful. We all know what happened in 09 and 010 when unemployment peaked and all of us constricted our household budgets. Well, crime went up. Why did crime go up? Crime went up because people lost their jobs. We all constricted. We tried to do the best that we can. And as an agency, we constricted as well. And when we constricted as an agency, a few things happened. First of all, the deputies hadn't received a pay raise in quite some time. In fact, they're going on their 7th year without a pay raise. Primarily because we're funded by, guess what, ad valorem taxes. And when our property taxes, our total property taxes in the community shrink about 31% over the last 4 years, what happens to an agency that is fueled by ad valorem taxes, property taxes? We constrict as well. So what do you do? What do you do as the chief executive officer of 500 employees? By the way, 547 employees when I took office. Now we're down to about 491. One way you do it is you don't hire, or you, through attrition, you don't lay off anyone. That was one of my commitments in 2008. But you look at every position that becomes open through attrition, and you decide which ones are going to be filled. Are there positions that can be filled by non-sworn employees? Perhaps. Are there other things that we can reconstruct and redirect? Are there shift assignments that perhaps we can look at? Is that popular with the men? Absolutely not. But when you reduce overtime by over $800,000 in 42 months, it's pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable. 3 key things that we do at the Sheriff's Office that many of you know. We do all of the road patrol throughout the county, 540 square miles. We handle all of the court services. We have about 24 deputies that handle everything in that courtroom. In our county jail, currently we have about 450 inmates. In the last 42 months in the county jail, we've reduced that budget by $2.1 million. $2.1 million just in the county jail. looking at contracts that had expired when I took office, and looking at a host of things. So we constricted, like good Republicans do in different times like this, and we reacted just like the economy has reacted. But you know what? We know that we've got credits that we've built up, and we do know that when those credits continue to build and this economy turns and our property values go up, working side by side with collective bargaining and the union, we will see a change in the morale, perhaps, of the deputies. But more importantly, we will continue on the mission that we've been on, which is keeping you safe and doing it at a reduced price. 60 days from today, you're going to have an opportunity to vote for your next sheriff. I've been in office 42 months. I've done a lot of things. Have there been some hiccups along the way? Of course. I need your vote August 14th. Thank you.
Very nice. I am Bill McMullen, and I'm your Republican candidate running for sheriff. It's nice to see a lot of very familiar faces. Many of you I've known for a very, very long time. As a long-term resident of Indian River County, I have been your public servant in this community for almost 30 years. Many of you read in the newspaper just recently where I retired to comply with the Resign to Run law just last week. Real quick, I want to talk about my background. Like I said, I've been with the Sheriff's Office since 1983. I started with the Department of Corrections in 1982. And since 1983, I've called Indian River County my home. As a child growing up, my father worked for the state of Florida, and each time he was promoted, we moved to a new town. So I decided that once I became an adult, I was going to put some roots down, and this is the community that I picked. Of course, living all over Florida, I've had the opportunity to see other communities, live in other communities, and I can tell you that there is no community that I'm more proud to be part of and more proud to call home than Indian River County, which is why I've stayed, which is why I love this community so much. I was very blessed in my career. I got promoted very early. I became a lieutenant at the age of 24. I've held various administrative positions throughout our organization for 25 years, so 2.5 decades. I've been part of the sheriff's management team. Sheriff Loar is the 4th sheriff that I've worked for. The 4th sheriff that I've worked for. As an administrator, I've looked at 4 sheriffs, and I've seen the things that worked and the things that didn't work. So I bring with me almost 30 years of administrative experience to the table with our sheriff's office, with our community right here in Vero Beach, Indian River County, Sebastian, Fellsmere, and the like. I would like you to consider something that Sheriff Loar just mentioned a minute ago about protecting our community. Protecting our community is our primary focus. That's our core responsibility as law enforcement officers. That's the core responsibility of any law enforcement agency, is protecting our community. I find it extremely difficult to understand how, over the course of several years, our organization has gotten flipped upside down, where we have 80% of our cost and 80% of our organization supporting 20% of the people doing the work. I pledge to try to correct that, because I think boots on the ground, people living in our community deserve to have people patrolling their streets, patrolling their neighborhoods, watching their businesses, shaking doors at night, and making sure that while each of us are asleep, peacefully asleep in our community, we don't become a victim. I can tell you that during the last 42 months, we've had some digression in the amount of service, the line level service provided to the residents of our community under the recently enacted shift plan that came into effect in, came into effect in 2010. I'm very concerned about that. As many of you know, I just retired. I could have very easily have taken my retirement and moved on. Of course, I'm not moving from Vero Beach, but moved on to some other career or something else. I feel so strongly about what's not occurring for our resident, for the taxpayer dollars that we're spending, that I'm very concerned about it. And I'm concerned to the point that I would retire early just to run for office. I ask you to consider that. In each of our businesses and each of our lives, we've all had to make budget adjustments because of the dwindling economy. I can tell you that the Board of County Commissioners has very effectively and very swiftly reduced the sheriff's budget by almost $4 million itself. Not by the sheriff's pen and not by the sheriff's hand, but the Board of County Commissioners did. They reduced his budget by 45 full-time positions that were drawing and earning funds, what we call lapsed salary money, for salaries and benefits. And as you can imagine, 45 positions amasses a massive amount of money. His current budget is, he met what the Board of County Commissioners asked for. But how many of us in this room have been here for a number of years and watched other political candidates reduce their budget effectively during an election year? It's a campaign budget. If he loses, he only has to live with it for 3 months, the first quarter. If he wins, then he can effectively go back to the board and ask for more money, which of course we saw happen in December when he asked for more cars. So I ask for you to consider all of these things. Obviously, if you hadn't had an opportunity to go to our website and look at who we are, what we stand for, and what we do, I ask that you look for the truth there, and please vote for me on August 14th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. The next, we're going to ask questions. I'm going to ask you a few, and then we've got some that Carl will ask that were written from the audience. You each have 1 minute to respond to each question. The first question I have, Daryl, one of the first things, or one of the early things you did was the 12-hour shift changes. I was wondering if you could... My question was that one of the first things Daryl did early on was the shift change, and the 12-hour shift change. I was wondering if this worked out the way you anticipated, what the pros and cons were, what both your opinions are of how that's working out.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. The question was, there was a shift change that occurred, actually it was in 2010, so it's, that was about 11, 13 months into my office. We looked at everything, we analyzed what was going on. When I took office, there was a built-in 4 hours of overtime every pay period for every deputy. There was also training that was all over the map. I centralized that by 4 10-hour shifts versus 3 12-hour shifts on, 4 off, 3 12-hour shifts on, 4 off, and there was some rotation going on in there as well. Now, when you have men and women in high-profile positions that are working 12-hour shifts that can take the lives of anybody, take their rights away from them, consecutive days, there is a fatigue factor. That came into play as well. Additionally, finances came in. The big thing on the finances, the training was all over the map. With the 410s, you're either off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, with Wednesday being our fat day. On Wednesday, all training occurs. Before I got into office, in fact, in 2009, it existed. The training was all over the map. So anytime you went to training, it was overtime, essentially. You could go to training on your day off. Who wouldn't for time and a half? Now, couple that with the elimination and the mandate to reduce our budget. Overtime is huge, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why I believe the 410s work. And the shifts are also staggered. They're staggered to when the calls for service are occurring, and then they de-escalate when the calls are not occurring.
Thank you. My opinion differs greatly from that of our sheriffs. I come to you again with almost 30 years of experience here in our community, and I can tell you that it is extremely important. What the sheriff is actually trying to say is he's loaded our patrol shifts for peak calls of service. He's mentioned that almost verbatim in numerous other places that's quoted in the press. I can tell you, local law enforcement has to provide a continuous, solid, steady level of service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I ask you to consider this question. If you leave for work at 7:45 in the morning, thank you, and your house is burglarized at 8:30, and you get home at 5:15 p.m. and you call the sheriff for help because you've been burglarized. The call for service comes in at 5:15, but the crime actually occurred at 8:15. Had we been in your neighborhood, that crime may not have happened. Local law enforcement has to be present. Law enforcement presence works. How many of you lift your foot off the accelerator when you see an empty patrol car parked on the side of A1A? Yes, you all do. Us riding through your neighborhood has the exact same effect on crime. We have to be there. We have to be there in full force, and we have to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you.
There was a local publication in the last few weeks. Local publication in the last few weeks put out a report about the scheduling of shifts and coverage on the Barrier Island. Daryl, I was wondering if you could address it, and Bill, also you as well. Was it factual? Was it in context? Whatever you want to add to that story. Appreciate your response.
Sure. You know, we often get asked a lot of things when you run an agency as large as ours, 10th largest employer in the county. Of course, we have a lot of things. We do not manage our agency by what the media perceives. In that particular case, the media made a request for public records. 2 different public records were delivered. One was a snapshot of what we call our computer data dispatch that shows every unit that's working, whether they be in a zone or they be traffic or ranch and grove or crime prevention, all of those. And then they were provided a snapshot of a line-up assignment. The line-up assignments, much like those of you in the real world that have employees that perhaps call out sick or have to go home early, oftentimes does not match those 2 documents. Those 2 documents came out. The local media picked upon that and really took heartache with it. Some interesting things that occurred throughout that entire public records request. By the way, in the political atmosphere, I guess I should expect over a dozen public records requests that seemingly are fueled by my opponent. And that's just unfortunate, because what we're doing now is putting our employees that have to pull these public records, do all of this work, and take them away from their productiveness.
I'm going to start backwards. Complying with public records requests from the general public or from any other person in our community or even from any other state is our responsibility as public employees. It is the cornerstone of what keeps government honest. That's what we're supposed to do. If you ask for a record, we're supposed to give it to you. If it's not specifically exempted under Florida Statute 119, it should be yours, and it should be yours immediately, and it should be yours without delay. As for the 32963 article, sure, I requested the data. Did I actually need the data? No, folks, I sure didn't. You know why? Because I was a watch commander. I relieved the shift that got off at 6 a.m., and I saw that there were only 7 or 8 deputies working every day with the exception of Wednesday that I relieved. My shift came 10/8 at 0600 hours with 7, 8, or 9 deputies every single day with the exception of Wednesday. I can tell you that there are 11 specific geographic patrol zones in Indian River County. If there's only 7 deputies working, that means there are several zones, 4, 3, 2, 1, that aren't covered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think you, the citizen of Indian River County, deserve better than that. I think you're paying for more than that. I pledge to give you that wholeheartedly. We currently have enough employees to put 20 men on 4 12-hour platoons. Thank you.
As Vinny mentioned, we have additional questions that have come from the audience, and I'm going to read those questions one at a time. We have a 1-minute response time for each of those from each candidate. The first question is, what is your concept of, quote, rule of law, end of quote, within civil society? How do you believe you have fulfilled this in your career? Not my question.
Sure, I'll be more than happy to address that. I started down that road a minute ago when I talked about what our responsibility is to you, the citizen of this county, of the city, of the state, of this nation. We have an obligation to follow the rule of law. I can tell you that there are lots of times that I read a statute, whether it's a criminal statute or civil case law, and I ask myself, wow, what were they thinking? However, it is in fact signed in statutory law, whether it's civil law or criminal law. It's something that we have to enforce, and it's something that we have an obligation as public servants, no matter what agency we work for, We still serve our community, our people, the people of America, the people of Florida, the people of Vero Beach, the people of Indian River County. So no matter what the law is, the rule of law is our edict through the Constitution of the state of Florida is to fulfill every single law that our current governor and governors past have signed. That's our job. Thank you.
You know, it was Mark must have written that question. Mark, I knew that was your question.
I didn't understand it either.
Yeah, wow. But listen, it's this simple. We have policies, we have procedures, we have the Policeman's Bill of Rights, we have the Career Service Bill, we have collective bargaining articles. We have so many safeguards in place that police the police, essentially, and I think that may be what your question was, Mark. But having said all of that, so we're covered. As long as you know we're covered with that. So when you think about an agency our size, with over 150,000 calls for service a year, and deputies, not only in the jail, the courthouse, and on the road, about 20% of our deputies are in the green and white cars. They come into incidents a lot. Oftentimes, they make instant judgment decisions, right? A lot of quick thinking. And oftentimes, things come up. And guess what? Perhaps the right policy wasn't followed or the right procedure. And sometimes in terrible situations that unfortunately we've had to address, bad things do happen. And sometimes employees have to be disciplined or separated from the agency. Is that a popular thing to do? Of course not. Is it the right thing to do? Of course it is. In the last 42 months, you've read cases where I've been on the front page and I see my friend Lamar Stancil over in the corner, and I've made tough decisions. And that's what you want in your sheriff. You don't want a sheriff that's going to sit by and say, that's the good old boys, don't worry about that. That's the way we did business for years. No, 42 months ago, somebody got in the office that said, you know what, we've had enough. And now is the time to do the right, ethical, lawful, legal thing. And I'm very proud of the record. We run on our record, ladies and gentlemen, and you know that sometimes I've been bucked by the collective bargaining, by the union. In fact, the union didn't endorse me. Went and interviewed with them 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and lo and behold, I wasn't endorsed. They endorsed another opponent. So be it. But you know what? I'm the guy that's going to stand up, take them to task. If we lose a case, we lose a case. But we did the right thing, and we made the right and bold decision. Thank you.
This can't be Mark's question because the handwriting's different. What do you think of doing away with take-home cars? How much would it save the taxpayers?
Well, thank you for that question. You know, one thing that you have to look at, and my opponent earlier said that I requested some dollars in December. Yes, I did, and that's a recognized practice throughout the state, and those are dollars that you as taxpayers have paid into a different fund that we also purchase, ironically, fire trucks and other equipment with. So it wasn't out of bounds for the Sheriff's Office to ask or inquire about those automobiles. To answer your question, this is tried and true program. It's called the Indianapolis Plan. It's recognized nationwide. We do have a limit on how far an employee can take an automobile home. But I will tell you, when an employee has a sense of ownership in a vehicle, in other words, they're not hot seating a vehicle. When each of us get into a rental car, what do we typically do? Well, we drive a little different than we do our regular cars, right? Well, we have ownership at the Sheriff's Office, and we have ownership in our men and women that patrol in those vehicles. That's their office. Their office is set up with their onboard computer. They're inspected every single month to make sure that their automobiles are in top shape. We service them very frequently, every several thousand miles. They're serviced completely. We've got one of the top fleet departments on the east coast of the state of Florida. We've got other agencies coming to look at what we do in our fleet department. We service the city of Fellsmere's police cars. We service Indian River Shore's police cars. We service Indian River Shore's fire trucks, in addition to not only dispatching their 911 calls through our comm center, but we do a host of things. So to answer that question, which is an often asked question, we are in the position where we will continue with the take-home cars with the restrictions that are already in place. Thank you.
Finally, in all honesty, I can find something that I agree with the sheriff about. As was said, the Indianapolis plan has been tried and proven many, many times over. We've been using that system for a number of years. In fact, going all the way back to the days of R.T. Tim Dobek, and some of you remember him. In fact, many of you remember him. So we've been doing that plan for a long time. We've serviced several other agencies, cars at our fleet maintenance department for a long time as well. I can tell you that ownership of a piece of equipment is extremely important. I can say that without a doubt we probably extend the lifespan of a vehicle that's not hot seated probably 3.5 times. So our cars, unless they're crashed or they're a lemon, or the cost of ownership because of mechanical problems, i.e. lemon, our cars last us about 5 years, which is, considering the service duty that they have, is pretty phenomenal, which sends accolades or says accolades about our maintenance department. And the fact that our staff really honestly take care of their equipment, all their issued equipment. So thank you very much.
Last question. Leadership is leading with integrity. This includes responsibility, obedience, respect, and wisdom. Please reflect. Somebody can't spell it. Please reflect about leadership. That wasn't you, Mark.
No, I didn't write it.
Rotate these over.
Whichever way you guys want to handle it. Reflect on leadership. You want to take off?
Certainly. I'll be happy to talk about leadership. I've been a leader. I just told you a few minutes ago that I've been a leader in the Indian River County Sheriff's Office since I'm 24 years old. When I made lieutenant. Prior to that, I was a sergeant. So I've always had a staff of personnel that were assigned to me that I was responsible for. I was responsible to make sure that they did their job and served the community the way we expected to, for them to earn their money. In addition to that, I was responsible to grow them into better employees. I can tell you that currently we don't have a plan to grow employees into better employees, which breaks my heart. Because when I look at myself and I look at 2 people sitting on the back wall when they're gone, who's going to take their place? Because we're not growing new people like me or like them. I will tell you, I want to talk about unionization real quick in the last 30 seconds that I have. When Sheriff Loar took office, we had 1 bargaining contract. The exiting and retiring Sheriff Raymond had just signed that contract when he left office. Now there's 5. I ask you to consider, and I won't say, I'm not going to give you the answer, I ask you to consider, why do you think an employee unionizes? There are 5 union contracts. If PERC, the Public Employees Relations Commission, would not have denied another work group, there would be 6 contractual arrangements that the Sheriff's Office has to deal with. I ran corrections, you all know that. When I ran corrections, we had 2 union call votes of my staff that worked for me in corrections. You want to see leadership? Both times those union call votes were turned down by the members that worked for me. I didn't bring unionization to the Sheriff's Office. But when the staff worked for me, they felt like they didn't need a union. So just ask yourself that question. Why do employees unionize? I've never been a member of a union. But ask yourself why they do unionize. And then consider the 2 union votes that were called while I was the director. And both times they were overwhelmingly defeated. So thank you very much.
You know, when you talk about leadership, you reflect on your past experiences and your past accomplishments. And somewhere throughout your career, which I'm approaching 24 years, and rose through the ranks at one agency and I'm very proud to be in charge of this agency, you find a blend of leaders that you followed throughout your career, some good, some bad. Unfortunately, or fortunately, you learn most of your leadership skills from the bad leaders that you followed, because that's not the way you're going to do business. You know, so to be a leader, you've got to look in the mirror each and every day. You've got to look at your lifestyle. You've got to look at your relationships. You've got to look at your family. You've got to look at your church. And you've got to look at the friends that you hang around and the time that you spend with them. But more importantly, when you walk into the room, ladies and gentlemen, they've got to know that you're in charge. They've got to know that you can be your friend, but you've got to be serious. Ladies and gentlemen, Indian River County Sheriff's Office has a sheriff that is recognized, and when he goes places and he does things, he is respected because he's not afraid. And if you have somebody that's afraid to do their job, that's afraid to challenge their bosses, like some have done in the past, you've got a problem. You've got stagnant problems. So I'm very proud to lead you, and I know that there's leaders in this room, and I'm very, very honored to be with you, and I'm very proud to be the leader of Indian River County Sheriff's Office.
We're going to have a 2-minute summations from each of the candidates. Bill, if you want to.
I'm first.
I think so. Absolutely. Thank you.
Again, I want to start out by saying thank you very much for being here. I know you all came out in some pretty bad weather. I do sincerely appreciate your presence, and I appreciate your paying attention to what the sheriff and I both have to say. I can tell you that law enforcement is in my blood. Some of you may know that I'm a third-generation public servant. My father before me and my grandfather before him. So between the three of us, or among the three of us, there's a century of law enforcement service that flows through my blood, flows through my veins. This is what I do. Our family's been part of Florida for a very, very long time, actually a very long time. I'm your candidate to make change. I'm the leader that we need to move our organization into the next decade. I'm the leader that we need to turn the morale around in our Indian River County Sheriff's Office. And I say ours because they're protecting me too. They're protecting my family and my friends and our business interests, just like they're protecting your family, your friends, and your business interests. I can tell you that in all of my life, I've been in and around this business. I've never, not one time, experienced the morale problems that our organization has had in the last 42 months. I've been disheartened by it from the very beginning, and it took 2 years for me to decide, thank you, that I was going to run for sheriff. 2 years. Thought long and hard about, will the organization level out? Will we get back on track? Will we be doing what we're supposed to be doing, what our core mission is, to protect the people that live, work, and visit this beautiful county that I call home and that you call home? I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud to have been your public servant for my entire adult life. I ask you for your vote on August 14th. I need your support. Talk to your friends and family, and I hope to see you in January. Thank you very much.
First of all, I want to compliment Bill for having a good debate with us tonight. I think there was a lot of anxiety in the room. I think there was a lot of anxiety in the county. I think there's a lot of anxiety at the agency. And I'll tell you why. You know, 42 months ago when I came into office, we talked about the things that were happening and how we had to constrict and how we had to recognize some of the issues that had to be modified, how people had to be held accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, I'm 44 years of age. I've been married for 23 years. Got a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, one at Vero Beach High School, another one at Rosewood Elementary. My wife is a small business owner. She employs 5 people at her optical in Sebastian, 1103 US 1 Ocean Views Optical. Walk-ins welcome. Walk-ins welcome. Let's not forget that. But I say that because all seriousness is you don't need a change. You need a strong leader that is right at an agency at the wrong time economically. I will tell you, my opponent talks about morale a lot. If the employees were getting a 3 or 4 or 5% pay raise every year, guess what? I'm a hero, but I still held them accountable, right? I will continue to hold them accountable because that's what the public expects. Is it popular? Absolutely not. But I pledge to you, in 60 days, when you elect me as the next sheriff of Indian River County, that's still the 10th one, but for my 2nd term, you will get what you pay for. I can assure you of that. I'm proud and I'm honored to be here tonight. I look forward to leading you. Please get your friends and families out. 60 days. Thank you, and God bless you.
they did a great job. If you want to